Inheritance, an Upper Earth novel. Chapter 13, The Sieve of Eratosthenes. Tom marvelled at the cavern. He didn't know what he'd expected, but this underground fairyland, with delicate needles reaching down, stalagmites the size of standing stones, and cascades dashing against rocks, wasn't it? Epic, said Tom. Stupendous, Paul confirmed. Ethan summed up all of their sentiments in one cool, drawn-out whistle. The tortuous path had forced them to scramble and climb over slippery rocks and sliding scree. It had taken its toll on Paul, who frequently needed help over the difficult terrain. "This is a perfect place for a break," Ethan said, finding a seat next to a rock pool, where the water shone phosphorescent green. Rock formations sprouted from the ground like distorted giants' fingers, ready to snatch the unwary. Tom couldn't help thinking about the gunman. The gate through the cellar was closed, but maybe another way into the tunnel existed. Can we risk slowing down? Paul sank down onto a nearby rock, groaning like every muscle in his body ached. Whatever the dangers behind us, we need to rest. Tom sought out a comfortable rock. If rocks could ever be called comfortable, he mused. "Hold this a sec." Ethan passed the flashlight to Tom. With both hands free, Ethan opened up his backpack and pulled out a bulging plastic bag. "Anyone for a sandwich?" "You brought food?" Paul's eyes were wide in disbelief. "I wasn't likely to get any dinner this evening, so I took a few supplies with me." They fell upon the sandwiches like starved street dogs. "What else have you got in there?" asked Paul in between mouthfuls. "Sleeping bag? Tent? Cuddly toy?" Tom chipped in. No, and what planet are you on?" Ethan made an open-mouthed caveman stare at Tom. "So what, then?" Paul insisted. "Extra batteries for the flashlight, a rope, matches, a compass, and a few other bits and pieces." Paul stared at him, a bemused look upon his face. Ethan grinned. "Be prepared for anything. That's my motto." "Anything?" Paul echoed. "What about Tom's dragon? Are you prepared for that?" "Dragon?" Ethan looked at Paul, as though he'd just said that Jurassic Park was a real-life documentary on how not to create a theme park. Tom saw this whole expedition falling apart before his eyes. It was already a minor miracle that Paul believed any of his story, but he wouldn't expect Ethan to swallow a word of it. "Stop trying to wind him up, Paul. You'll be telling us that ghosts exist next." Tom gave Paul a warning look. "But you said—" "Watch this very subtle shake of my head, Paul. Not another word." Paul swallowed whatever it was he'd been about to say. "I don't believe in anything supernatural," Ethan said, waving a half sandwich between his fingers. At that precise moment, a gromlik padded towards them, its pale grey form shimmering in the darkness. Tom had grown used to them. Since entering the tunnel, he'd already spied 3. He knew by now that the others didn't see gromliks, and he'd chosen not to mention them. "You can try and frighten me with ghosts, ghouls, and vampires all you like. It won't work," Ethan declared. When it drew close to Ethan, the gromlik's colourless, blind face sniffed vaguely in his direction. Tom wondered if gromliks were attracted by smells other than the scent of death. It passed by and continued on its way. Obviously not interested in sausage sandwiches, then. Upon finishing his sandwich, Ethan twisted the food bag closed. "Can't we have another?" Paul asked. Not for now. You may think I've got a ton of food, but between 3 of us, it's hardly enough for one proper meal. Better we eat it bit by bit. We might be down here for a good few hours before we find a way out. Ethan stowed the bag inside his backpack and stood up, ready to continue on. A meandering path led them through echoing caves and claustrophobic tunnels. Each corner they turned revealed another secret of this underground world, but nothing compared to the sight of an arch carved from the rock. Tom stared at it with suspicion. As far as he was concerned, arches were bad news. When he first passed through the arch in the cellar and found the tunnel, he'd been terrorised by a gromlik. What delights are hidden on the other side of this one? Paul was dancing around it like an archaeologist who just found a long-lost tomb. "This is incredible," he said. "And look, there's an inscription at the top. Pass through the Sieve of Eratosthenes. I only know of one Eratosthenes, and he was a famous Greek mathematician." "Paul, do you have any idea how weird you sound?" Ethan shook his head, as though Paul were a lost cause. Tom suppressed a smile. Paul was an oddball, for sure, but he was an oddball that Tom needed, and Paul's eccentricity was beginning to grow on him. Let's face it, he thought. Anyone normal wouldn't be hunting a dragon with me, knowingly. A shout came from Ethan, who had just walked through to the other side of the arch. "Hey, guys, maybe this is supposed to be the sieve." Tom followed Paul through to where Ethan waited, at the edge of a great chamber, 50 feet high and 3 times as wide. Stretching out across it was a maze of rock bridges, resting on columns that rose from the dark depths below. "Whoa, that proves it," thought Tom. "Arches only lead to trouble." "This should be fun." Ethan's voice betrayed a hint of excitement. Paul, on the other hand, had lost all trace of colour and shuffled backwards, putting distance between him and the edge. "Are you sure we need to go across this?" Ethan smirked. "Don't tell me you're afraid of heights." "Only when there's a risk of falling from them," Paul replied, his voice rising higher with every word. "This is the only way forward," said Tom. "I say we cross." He glanced in Paul's direction. "Okay, Paul?" A mumble came from Paul, which sounded like, "If it's absolutely necessary." At the beginning, there were only 2 bridges to choose from. Which one? Tom wondered. Left or right? Tom took a step forward on the left-hand bridge. "Wait!" shouted Paul, peering at the base of one bridge. "A number is carved into the stone here. It must be a mathematical maze." Paul lowered himself down onto his hands and knees and moved closer to the edge to see more clearly. "There's a 24 on this bridge. What number's over there, where you're standing?" Next to Tom's feet, the number 41 had been chiselled, and he called it out. Paul peered back towards the arch, as if groping for the answer. "I think Ethan was right. This is the Sieve of Eratosthenes. It's a mathematical sieve. So—" Paul paused, and his face contorted with concentration. "So?" Ethan prompted, losing patience. "Well, if you think of how a kitchen sieve shakes out fine flour to leave the lumps behind, Eratosthenes' sieve acts in the same way. It shakes out all non-prime numbers to leave you with only primes." Paul scratched his head until his straight dark hair stood on end. "To get through the maze, I think we should follow primes. That was what Eratosthenes was trying to find." Okay. Tom was having trouble digesting or even understanding what Paul was saying. It wasn't very easy to think about maths when standing on the edge of a precipice. Come to that, it wasn't easy to think about maths at any time. Remind me what a prime number is? That's so elementary, Tom. How can you not know that? A prime is a number greater than 1 that is only divisible by itself or 1. So which bridge? Asked Tom. If we choose a prime number, then it must be 41, the bridge you're standing on. Tom edged forwards. The stone beam on which he stood could only be a foot wide. A step too far to the left or right, and he would plummet to a painful death. He concentrated on his feet, keeping them straight. To maintain balance, he held his arms out to the sides. The bridge was roughly 10 feet long. As he neared the centre, his confidence grew, and his breathing came more easily. That was just about when his luck ran out. The rock gave way beneath his feet. Even as the bridge crumbled, Tom desperately tried to scramble backwards with his hands and feet. But there came a point when he knew he wouldn't make it. The bridge was disappearing more rapidly than he could move. His feet lost their purchase, and his hands grabbed wildly at shards of stone. Someone jerked the hood of his sweatshirt, hauling him backwards. Ethan was behind him. Twisting onto his stomach, Tom lunged for the other boy's outstretched arm. With one hand, Ethan was anchoring himself on Paul, and his other was reaching out to grab Tom. Inch by painful inch, they pulled him back to the safety of the ledge. When he got his breath back, Tom nodded to Ethan. Thanks. No probs. I suppose that's what's meant by passing through the sieve. So, must be this other bridge then. But this time, we rope ourselves together. From his backpack, he produced a thin, neatly coiled rope. Paul eyed it warily. I've seen dog leads stronger than that. Sorry, Ethan grumbled. When I woke up this morning, I didn't expect to be down a hole negotiating my way across a booby-trapped maze. Next time, I'll think to bring a bigger rope. Whatever the size of rope, Tom felt a whole lot safer with it tied around him. He didn't know what sort of knot it was at his waist, but it felt solid. He'd been impressed by the way Ethan's hands seemed so expert in tying knots. The 3 boys looked at each other, silently agreeing that it was time to move. They were ready. As they started out, Tom was at the front and Ethan in the middle, with 10 feet of rope separating each of them. Paul had volunteered to go last and was visibly shaking, though it didn't seem to hinder his ability to talk. I still don't understand what went wrong last time. 41 is a prime number. How could the bridge have been the wrong one? Maybe we were supposed to fall, Ethan joked. Pass through the sieve might mean fall to your death, you're not wanted here. Could you 2 knock it off? Tom was already taking his first tentative steps on the remaining bridge. He advanced with gritted teeth and the determination of a tightrope walker. To his surprise, the bridge held, and he made it to the first of the supporting pedestals. Ethan traversed swiftly, and some tugs of encouragement on the rope ensured Paul followed not too far behind. Yet the success of the crossing didn't make Tom feel any better. Being on the pedestal made him wonder if they hadn't started something they couldn't possibly finish. It was roughly 5 feet across, but with 3 boys standing on it, seemed smaller. The other side of the chamber was still a long way off. Huddled close together, they examined the second set of numbers. Of the 2 possible bridges, one was numbered 59 and the other 39. So which do we take? Asked Tom. Well, 59 is a prime number. Paul didn't sound confident. Last time the prime number was a booby trap, Ethan reminded. Tom looked in Paul's direction. I should be taking the advice of the mathematician. That's what he's here for. We try the prime number first, he said. In any case, we're roped together now, so how dangerous can it be? This rope is only lightweight, warned Ethan. If you fall, I can't even guarantee that it'll support your weight. Besides, you might end up pulling all three of us over. Let's just try it this way first, okay? I'll be careful. Ethan shook his head. It's your funeral. Just don't make it mine as well. As Tom stepped onto the bridge, Ethan moved backwards, as far away from the edge as possible. Behind him, Paul had no other choice but to do the same. Tom took a first hesitant step. The bridge held. Then a second. Still, all was well. After his third step, a cry from Paul broke his concentration. Stop! I've got it! To pass through the maze, we're supposed to pass through the Sieve of Eratosthenes. That's what it said on the arch. That means we're supposed to choose non-primes only. Come back, Tom. It's the wrong bridge. Now you tell me. Tom's heartbeat raised a notch. He pivoted around like someone who just noticed they were walking on extremely thin ice. That was when the first cracks began to appear. Not again. This time, he went down in a free fall. 1 minute he stood on the bridge, the next he was falling with it. As his body reached the end of the rope, he was jerked like a puppet. But the rope held. At first. Then he shunted down a few inches. Then a few inches more. He guessed that above him, Ethan was sliding little by little to the edge. Ethan's weight and strength wasn't enough to hold him. Once Tom had stopped swinging, he came to rest against the rock column. There were ridges on it. He should be able to climb up. Tom latched his fingertips onto an outcrop of rock and tried to push up on his left foot to take his weight off the rope. He wasn't quick enough. The rope dropped him again, making him lose his grip on the rock face. Sorry, Paul, he heard Ethan shout from above. A scream followed, and from where he hung, Tom saw Paul's kicking feet swing into view from behind the column. Paul swung to and fro like a pendulum. Ethan, you lunatic! Paul shrieked. Why did you push me off? Understanding made Tom light-headed with relief. He used Paul's weight to balance mine. Still, with both Tom and Paul now hanging against the rock face, Ethan's voice sounded a little too smug. Cool it, Paul. At least no one's sliding now. The rope had slipped from Tom's waist, moving up his torso and digging into his ribs. If he could climb, it would take his weight off the rope and ease his pain. He peered down into the dark chasm that stretched away below. No, better not to look. He could no longer see Paul, who was hidden by the column of rock. Paul! A miserable cry came back. What? This isn't going to be easy. What's the rock face like in front of you? Like a rock face. Get mad all you like. It'll make you forget your fear. Does it have ledges or ridges on it? Paul went quiet for a moment. Yes, he said in a calmer tone. We have to climb. Ethan's voice came from above. Both of you need to start at the same time. It's the only way it can work. He was right, Tom realised. If only one of them began to climb, the other would pull Ethan towards the edge. I'll try, Paul answered. but only if Ethan pulls on the rope at the same time. If I pull you, you won't be able to climb properly. Besides, I need to be on my guard in case either of you slips. Try it on your own first. If you still have a problem, then I'll help." "Are you ready, Paul?" Tom called out. "Wait." "Any time soon would be good." Ethan sounded tired and exasperated. Tom wondered how well protected Ethan was from the tension on the ropes. They had to take the strain off him, and fast. "On 3, Ethan said. "You both transfer your weight from the rope to the rock. 1. Tom positioned his feet and fingers in readiness. "I said wait." "We can't wait any more, Paul," Ethan snapped. 2, 3. Tom's toes and fingers clung to the ridges of rock, but only barely. He would need to keep moving to stop his fingers cramping. He registered a fraught exchange between Paul and Ethan, but chose to ignore it. Concentrate. He knew he wouldn't get through this if he didn't. He lifted his left foot to find another ridge and looked up to see where he could place his right hand. There. It might be too far away, but there was nothing lower. He pushed up on his left foot and reached. His right hand found its mark, but it was a smaller handhold than the last. His fingers trembled under the strain, while his right foot hung in mid-air. Where now? Tom scanned the rock face. There was nowhere to place his hanging foot. He searched to the left and noticed a series of ridges that could take him higher. But first I have to travel sideways. He gripped tightly with both hands, but hesitated. If I misjudge it, I'll be falling again, and may take Ethan with me. Come on, Tom, move. Taking his weight on his hands, he hopped his feet to the left. The movement was so fast, the toes of his trainers scrambled to find a foothold. Then his left foot lodged itself into the rock. Tom exhaled. With both feet now on the ledge, he could relax his fingers. And some people do this for enjoyment. Complete nutters. Climbing at the speed of a careful caterpillar, Tom continued the ascent. Though not a great distance, the climb tested Tom's muscles with cramped finger jams and strenuous leg stretches. By the time he levered himself up onto the edge of the pedestal, his clothes were soaked with sweat. On the far side of the pedestal, Ethan lay flat to the rock floor with his head poked over the brink. "I can't do it," Paul complained. "I'm too tired. My fingers won't grip anymore." Ethan crooked his head around in Tom's direction. "Nice to see your ugly mug again." Tom walked over and crouched down next to Ethan, squeezing his shoulder in a silent thank you. Without Ethan's quick thinking, they might all have fallen into the bottomless abyss. "Paul's light," Tom said. "Together we should be able to lift him." "Anything, if it'll stop him clinging to the rock like a frightened rabbit. How can he expect to climb with his eyes closed?" "I heard that," Paul moaned. "My eyes aren't closed. I'm just squinting." They organised themselves with Ethan in front and Tom behind, both heaving on the rope like a tug-of-war team. In less than 20 seconds, Paul lay in a quivering heap on the pedestal. "I want to go home," he whined. "Get a hold of yourself," Ethan sniped. "We got through it. Time to move on." Tom cringed. The last thing he needed was for Paul and Ethan to be at each other's throats. With a movement of his hand, he gestured to Ethan to tone it down, and squatted down next to Paul. "Come on, up you get," Tom said. "Thanks to you, we know which bridges to take. There won't be any more problems like that. I hope." Paul levered himself up, darting a poisonous look at Ethan. "All right," he said. but keep that maniac away from me." At the next bridge crossing, Paul didn't hesitate. Faced with a choice between 17 and 58, he barked out, "58!" Again, Tom crossed first, this time wondering whether the numbers made any sense at all. Maybe it's just one big joke. There's probably no safe path across, whatever bridge we choose. But the bridge remained solid beneath his feet. By disregarding the prime number and taking the alternative, Paul got it right. Even so, each time Tom took the first step forwards to cross, he stopped breathing, waiting for that moment when the bridge would collapse. But time after time, Paul's reasoning held. "Have you two noticed anything?" Paul asked, when they were roughly halfway across the cavern. "I've noticed that we've managed to stay on our feet for the past 6 bridges," Ethan answered. "Your brain's not bad once you get it in gear." Paul only shook his head in reply. "Look," he pointed straight ahead. "There's one platform that's larger than any of the others. I can't quite make it out from here, but there seems to be a round hollow at its centre. Each bridge we take brings us nearer to it." He's right. That's where this maze is leading us. Tom stared hard at the large pedestal. The hollow contained something, but at this distance it was hard to tell what. They made another crossing, and another. Tom no longer felt fear, but instead a feeling of anticipation spread through him. The main pedestal occupied his thoughts like a drug. With only one bridge left, he finally made out the shapes that filled the hollow. Stones. Smooth grey stones the size of ostrich eggs. Tom thought back to the words of the old ghost. The ring was enclosed in a stone.